But why are lights seen in advance of any tremor underground? The mystery remains unsolved. If lights are linked to tremors, does this explain the UFOs seen at Yakima? Persinger and Durr found that the lights do appear above local fault lines.
This is per month. The faces, there we go. These are UFO reports along one direction, a series coming in the other direction, and then a quake should be predictable right in the center. There it is, the asterisk. We found that these balls of light would suddenly become more intense and more frequent during the same months when there was an increase in earthquake activity in the vicinity of the reservation.
Dancing balls of light are still not fully explained, but it seems clear that the answer will be found inside the Earth. However, Michael Persinger and John Durr's research into earthquakes does not explain all close encounters with UFOs.
The tectonic strain theory of UFOs has been designed to try to answer the question, why so many of these glowing balls of light seen at Yakima? But the problem is that mixed in with sightings of balls of light have been other objects. There's also been close encounters.
We deliberately exclude close encounters types of sightings.
What might appear to be spacecraft, there appear to be abductions.
What do you want with me? What do you want with me?
In the last 15 years, tens of thousands of people have come forward to describe their experiences at the hands of alien abductors. They recount tales that range from the tranquil to the terrifying. Messages of goodwill, horrific medical examinations, and the removal of fetuses and hybrid babies. People have been abducted whilst driving or when secure in their beds. One of the most famous and convincing cases occurred more than 20 years ago in Arizona.
My name is Travis Walton. I'm presently employed as a purchasing agent. I was working in these woods as a tree sawyer back in 1975.
Well, my name is Michael Rogers, and in 1975 I was a logger right here on this spot. I was the crew boss of a group of guys, of which Travis Walton was a member. And today, that's what I'm still doing. I'm still doing the same kind of work.
We just finished up, loaded our chainsaws and stuff in the back of the truck when we spotted a strange light coming through the trees.
Just light coming through the trees.
The longer I looked, the stranger it was. One of the guys in the back yelled out, "It's a spaceship."
Travis jumped out of the truck to go get a closer look at it.
As I hurried towards it, I noticed that it wasn't moving away.
It was a large glowing object, a disc-shaped object, a UFO.
A disc, a metallic disc hovering there less than 100 feet away.
The color of the object itself was sort of a golden color, like the color of metal out of a blast furnace, you know, the color of steel.
Now, this was not some little hazy ball of glowing gas off in the distance. This was, I mean, it was a clearly defined mechanical object.
It just struck me as being quite perfect and quite beautiful.
It kind of had a sort of a rumbling sort of effect. It kind of like shook you inside, had a power to it. It was kind of like almost below the threshold of hearing.
At one point there where the thing started moving and started making more noise, and it started wobbling and it kind of raised up.
And the guys in the truck were yelling at me, "Stop, what are you doing?" You know, and get away from there and all this stuff.
And this thing by this time was making a lot of strange sounds.
And so I was having second thoughts about what I was doing.
He crouched down behind a log.
I just dove for cover.
You could see the truck shaking, and I could feel it through the steering wheel, and it was just shaking like this. And that's when things got really hairy.
I made up my mind right then, I'm getting out of here. And so I raised up to go.
This beam came out of this thing like a bright bluish beam of energy of some kind, and it struck him in the chest and head area.
And wham, something hit me.
Just momentarily, it was like blinding. I couldn't see for like a second. It just was like an explosion going off in front of him. It blew him back.
It felt a little bit like a physical blow. It felt a little bit like an electric shock, too.
And he landed way back over here.
I just blacked out.
And that's when I hit the gas. We realized that we had left Travis here. He was probably hurt. From every appearance, he was hurt. If he wasn't dead, he was certainly hurt. We all got out of the truck at one point and kept discussing about it, kept looking back over here and talking. And after, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of this conversation, we finally decided we better go back.
I regained consciousness very slowly. I was kind of in and out. I didn't know where I was. I was very disoriented. I just, in and out. I eventually kind of remembered what had happened, you know, walking up to the object and being hit by something. So I kind of surmised that I'd been hurt and that they had taken me to a hospital, and that's where I was.
Took a flashlight and shined it in the road down here and up in the clearing. We didn't see right off the bat. Travis isn't laying there where he'd fallen. He wasn't there.
There was an object lying across my chest. The light above me was sort of a rectangular fixture. I was lying on a hard surface. It seemed very hot and humid. But, you know, the main sensation was just this pain, this overpowering pain.
They conducted a 4-day search the next day and for the next 3 days after that. A very extensive search all over this entire area, which expanded out and out and out. A large area. A lot of men on horseback, dogs, a lot of men on foot, vehicles, helicopters, airplanes, you know. Couldn't find any trace of him. Never a trace of Travis. Never a trace of Travis. Never a trace of Travis.
When I finally got where I could focus my eyes, so I could hear the sounds of movement around me. I knew there was someone there, but I just, at first, assumed it was doctors, you know, people working on treating me. But when I finally got where my vision cleared, I saw these creatures standing over me, and I just flipped out. It was, you know, I instantly knew that I wasn't in a hospital, and I just flipped out. They came towards me. I started screaming at them, and I grabbed an object and swung it at them, screaming. They stopped all simultaneously, sort of extended their hands, and then all at once they all three turned and left the room. And there in the doorway is what I took immediately to be a person, a human being. He took me quickly down this hallway into a room where there were some other people waiting, people who looked like him. They led me over to this table and started to put me on this table, and you know, I started to have major misgivings about, you know, was I being rescued or what was really going to happen to me here. And one of them put a mask over my face, so it sort of looked like an oxygen mask. And I tried to grab it away, and I managed to get my hand on it, but I couldn't pull it away before I lost consciousness. The next thing I knew, I woke up. I came to quickly, and it was cold. dark. And I looked up, and there was a light above. And I saw a craft hovering above me, and it just shot up into the sky. I looked around. I was lying next to a highway.
Travis was missing for 5 days.
It's a mystery to me. You know, I can't understand what was going on there.
What makes abductions hard to dismiss is the close similarity of the experiences described.
Even from the very earliest UFO reports, people noticed that there were considerable similarities in the stories. What I found from this comparative study was that there were a great deal of similarity in the stories. Most start out with a capture, go to examination, and on very rare occasions, a kind of spiritual experience. There's also a great deal of similarity in the content, the description of the beings, the descriptions of the ship itself, the feelings and sensations and strange effects that people report. These are all extremely similar from one story to another. The sequence of events staying so regular is quite peculiar, given the fact that these are lengthy stories, they're quite bizarre. They would be excellent opportunities for people to simply rearrange some of the episodes or some of the events within an episode, but that very seldom ever happens.
Where do these alien kidnappers come from? They report their home planets from various star systems and distant suns. They include the Pleiades, Betelgeuse, Barnard's Star, and Zeta Reticuli. They're all light years from Earth. No signs of life have been found emanating from them. Some aliens bring messages of goodwill. Others come to harvest our genetic material. Abductee Steve Neal has mixed feelings about his experiences.
I have, in my opinion, definitely had contact with something non-human, independent, very smart, and it appears has a great concern for my soul personally. But when you get abducted, as it's called, and put on a table and reduced to nothing more than a piece of flesh, and you have needles put in you and you're scared to death, it really gets your attention. What I'm doing here is I'm illustrating various scenes that are going to be in a film that I'm producing about the so-called abduction phenomenon, or as I like to call it, the visitor phenomenon. It has a less threatening sort of connotation to it. In fact, that's all I've been doing the last year and a half is gray alien stuff, and aliens, and Roswell debris for reenactments of Roswell pieces done by Borderline, and sightings and encounters and all these different shows. It's kept me very, very busy. And so I've been doing sort of accurate portrayals of the way the beings are actually seen. And these beings you see here are actually based on information that I obtained from working with a hypnotherapist about 4 years ago.
A Florida insurance company now offers an alien abduction policy. However, to pay out, it demands greater proof than recalling an experience under hypnosis. And why do the various alien races choose different parts of the world to fly to?
One peculiarity of the stories, one element that would suggest there might be some cultural differences, is that while in North America, the small gray aliens have been the most common, in Britain, the commonest alien has been the tall, blonde, Nordic type. In South America, you tend to get more of a variety of aliens.
Alien abductions are not as straightforward as they seem. Does the answer lie in outer space, or is it all in the mind? The brain is an electromagnetic organ. There are billions of electrical pulses whizzing around it every second. Mess with those signals, and all kinds of strange things can occur. Could alien abductions be linked to the energy that creates UFO lights?
The question of the relationship between Earth lights, luminous phenomena, and abduction experiences is, I think, only marginally overlapping. The vast majority of these balls of light, which are seen at a distance, are physical phenomena tied to strain within the Earth's crust. The very few cases where people rush up to the light and have very predictable experiences, those individuals are indeed being stimulated by the balls of light. But the recent case of the abduction phenomenon, where allegedly millions of people have been visited in their bedrooms, it is much more a neuroscience problem than a geophysical one.
Michael Persinger has built a chamber to test his theory. It's completely soundproofed. The subject sits in darkness, blindfolded. A weak magnetic field is generated in a special helmet. A computer controls the field. Persinger varies the shape of the electromagnetic wave transmitted through the brain. It generates different types of mystical experience.
The kinds of things that people report in the chamber when their experiences are amplified by applying these complex, weak magnetic fields would be feelings of moving through a tube, feelings of floating through a cave, feelings of being detached, feeling another mind speaking through theirs, the sensations of spinning and of having body vibrations as if something is moving through the body, the experiences of sudden memories, intense memories from childhood. Now, they may not be memories from childhood, but that's how they are labeled. Sometimes we have had cases where a person feels that they may be dying and they can see the white light. And we can produce that with a certain kind of magnetic field pattern. These experiences are probably very common. Probably of the 6 billion brains that exist on this planet, the majority of us have had something like that. But we have culture that tells us how to explain it. So if you're in a laboratory with people you trust, then the experience of a sense of presence, even if it's aversive and frightening, will be looked at in that context. As one subject said, I know there was no one in the chamber with me because I saw the door closed or I felt the door closed, but yet I knew there was someone in the room with me. Another subject felt this presence. They felt something tugging on their leg. They felt something playing with the genitals, but they knew that couldn't be. So they labeled it as an experience that they attributed to the field because they knew they were in an experiment. But if you took the same experience when you're by yourself late at night in your bedroom, and the cultural label is, it's an alien abduction, how would you interpret it?
Professor Persinger can create apparitions using weak magnetic fields. But how can they be generated outside the laboratory? We are all bathed in strong electromagnetic radiation. It comes from sources all around us. Paranormal investigator Albert Button has linked alien abduction experiences to electrical fields. Albert researches the stray electromagnetic radiation created by high-tension power lines, radio waves, and other sources of energy. Abductees may be particularly sensitive. Albert has investigated 50 cases. The abductees share one factor in common.
Almost invariably, I've found that these abductees have something called a major electrical event where they've been struck by lightning, or been near lightning, or have had major electrocution. And this has changed their bodies permanently.
I have had an electric shock. It wasn't one which took me to hospital or anything, but it did throw me across the room. I had the electric shock before I had any contact with so-called aliens.
If you look at these people, they almost invariably have a long history of strange experiences, sometimes reaching back to childhood. And an abduction experience is just one in a whole family of experiences that they've had throughout their lives.
UFO experiences, aliens, bendy men, psychic things happening.
But these aren't ordinary people. These are people who are hypersensitive to these fields. These fields don't affect most people.
Electrical phenomena, television switching itself on and off, the video playing to itself for half an hour.
If they then go and live in what's called electromagnetic hotspot, they will start to have all kinds of sensations. They will suddenly see a bright light, which is a stimulation of the visual cortex.
Within this vicinity, there are microwave transmitters, radio transmitters, electrical substations. We seem to have everything virtually.
They will have hallucinations, which is stimulation of the temporal lobe. All different kinds of parts of the brain are sometimes kicked into action.
There's other experiences like allergies. There's tingling sensations under the skin. So you've got to look a lot deeper. You can't just look at the aliens.
They're dreamlike very often, these experiences. And researchers who are very keen on impressing the extraterrestrial aspect on this will filter out all of these absurdities. Trolls piloting spaceships, garden gnomes leading witnesses into enclosed areas, a dog lying in a carpeted flying saucer. These things occur over and over again, and it's quite obvious to me that the source of this imagery comes from the human unconscious rather than from Zeta Reticuli.
I genuinely believed that the experience had happened. It took me about 2 years to come round to actually being logical about it and looking at it in a logical way.
This is an environmental health issue, and in fact, alien abduction experiences are just a very small part of a much broader issue, which is electromagnetic pollution.
Nearly all accounts of abductions are recalled under hypnosis. But how reliable is hypnosis? We all have strong memories of our pasts. However, false memories, even without hypnosis, can be created if the subject wants to please their therapist. They recall what they think the hypnotist wants to hear. Even without hypnosis, as events fade and are dimly remembered, we create new memories to fill in the gaps, reinventing the past. It's all too easy to create false memories. A Canadian psychologist gave volunteers what they thought were personality tests. The psychologist used positive feedback to implant the idea that they saw a mobile on the day that they were born. He told them that they were exceptional personalities and that he suspected this was due to their brains being stimulated by the mobile in their cot. He had no idea if it was true, nor did his subjects. One group was simply asked what their first memory was. None of them could recall a mobile. Another group were regressed to their first memory using hypnosis or simple relaxation techniques. Almost half of them reported that they had real memories of a mobile on the first day of life. But babies' memories of events don't begin to function for at least the first 3 months of life. Memory is not a videotape. The vast majority of abductions are recalled under hypnosis by people who were alone at the time. However, what remains is much harder to explain as all in the brain. There are cases of multiple abductions or additional eyewitnesses like Travis Walton's horrific experience, or the case of Police Sergeant Alan Godfrey, who encountered a flying saucer whilst on patrol.
As I got near to this object, it became apparent to me that what I was looking at wasn't something that I would normally find in the early hours of the morning in Todmorden, you know.
3 other police officers reported a UFO in the sky.
It was a nuts and bolts thing. It wasn't an hallucination, it was real. This object was 20 foot wide. It's 14 feet high. It's diamond shaped. The bottom half of it was rotating. The top half was stationary. It had a bank of dark windows, or could have been paneling.
Under hypnosis, he described his abduction by aliens.
Now, in this room, there is a very tall humanoid over the bed to Earth. He's about 6 foot to 6'6", very tall, thin, with a beard. He had a skull cap on and he had this white gown on. What happens then is I'm asked to get on this bed. And these horrible little things come. They are a lamp-shaped head with black, dark eyes. That's the best way I can describe them. And there's about 7 or 8 of them. I know that night what I saw was real. It was damn real.
Is this close encounter a false memory created by hypnosis?
The actual account which Alan gives under hypnosis is very, very compelling, because when you fit together the jigsaw of what he remembers consciously and can tell us consciously with what he can only remember under hypnosis, it ties together. For instance, at the beginning of Alan's connection with the UFO, consciously, he tells us that he thought it was a bus. He realized on the second looking again that it wasn't a bus, and he decided to drive on and have a look at it. Under hypnosis, he says it's a bus. It's not a bus.
It's not a bus.
And you can see an expression on his face of incredulity. He does not believe what he's looking at.
It's like a flying saucer.
A lot of people think that Alan Godfrey has been led by the hypnotist or influenced by the hypnotist or myself. This is not true. All the doctors I have used, none of them in fact believe in UFOs. They're intrigued as to the witness's experience. They don't have an explanation for it, but they basically do not believe in UFOs. These doctors, if you would, stand between me and the witness.
There's a light. Shining light.
Apart from the fact that it's the doctors who carry out most of the interrogation without using leading questions, on at least 2 occasions, Alan Godfrey has rebelled and refused to answer any further questions. On one occasion, he almost jerked himself out of hypnosis and said, "I'm not answering you. I haven't to answer that."
I haven't to answer that.
Why haven't you to answer that?
Because when I think about it, it hurts.
It has to be said that at the time that Alan Godfrey had his experience and underwent hypnosis, the accounts of alien abductions were virtually, if not completely, unknown in the United Kingdom. I had certainly never heard of them. I don't know of anybody who had. Hypnosis seems to be the only tool, at least it's the only tool that I am aware of, to probe missing and confused memories. It's not a foolproof method, but if it hadn't been used, the abduction side of all the experiences of amnesiacs all over the world would never have come to light.
These are robots. Mm-hmm. They're not human. I honestly believe that what happened to me on hypnosis really happened.
Is there any other evidence to support these reports? Abductees report strange marks, scars and bruises.
I will wake up with injuries to my body I can't explain. I can't explain them. I don't want to find something on my body and say, gee, I wonder if aliens put it there. I want to know for sure. So when I go to bed, I'm very keen on what's what on my body. So to wake up with a 4-inch long cut out of nowhere underneath your long johns on your leg that burns is a big question mark. And this stuff happens to me fairly often. The other thing that happens, of course, you get these triangular marks. You hear about them so much. And it's real. People are really getting these. I get them. And what's fascinating about it is that they're identical to the ones the other individuals are getting. You look at my photographs of body injury, they look like everybody else's.
There are also reports of implants. One abductee even paid for an operation to have one removed. Jesse Long believes he was abducted as a child. Something was implanted in his leg.
Oh, you're just feeling twisting?
But it still hurts.
They don't seem concerned with me while I'm on the table screaming and yelling and wanting to get away, because these experiences are not pleasant at all. They're some of the most frightening things you could ever experience.
There it is. There's your
Wow.
triangular shard.
Cheese.
There we are. If you like, I'd lay it on the skin like that next to it. And let me blot off the blood.
This is a photograph taken of me sitting on the porch. You can actually see the scoop mark in my leg where the object was put in. The object always hurt for those 34 years. I mean, I had to wear my socks below them. Here's the big blunt end, and then we have the very tip of it, which is now here. So that when they're laid together, it forms a triangular shaped shard.
Electron micrographs show that it's only common glass. It contains no chemical elements alien to our planet.
It's silicon and magnesium and zinc and silver and calcium. Just recently I had it analyzed further. They found titanium. In addition to that, they've also found sulfur, 24% sulfur.
Are abductions happening for certain? Are they just figments of the imagination? There is no hard evidence.
I have no concrete proof. I don't have a cigarette lighter from the spaceship, you know. But I think that's going to be something that, if it happened, if somebody said they had the cigarette lighter from the spaceship, I'd be very skeptical right off, because I know the way this thing works, and they're not going to let us have anything to prove this is going on until they want us to.
I know that night what I saw was real. It was damn real. Now what I don't know is what was it and where did it come from?
It's a mystery to me. You know, I can't understand what was going on there.
And they always paralyze me because they know if they don't, I'll kill everyone I can get my hands on.
Why do they choose certain people? What do the aliens want?
I don't really know for sure, but I do know that this presence, this non-human intelligence, plans, if I'm to believe it, to make contact with every single last human soul in this world before they're finished with what they're doing. So it's better than landing on the White House lawn, I think. And it's certainly more effective.
Alien saucers crash in the United States.
It didn't look like an airplane, didn't look like a missile.
Do alien probes come down in Siberia?
Unlike most UFO cases, this one should be and can be resolved.
Do alien craft land in England?
I observed the craft probably for about 15 minutes on the ground.
Does the US government have proof of alien life? The United States, June 1947. A private pilot near Mount Rainier. He's the first to see unusual craft traveling at hitherto unknown speeds. Hundreds of reports of flying discs follow. Half a century later, the greatest mystery is solved.
Many people were told to keep their mouth shut about the things they saw.
A lot of us were still in shock and in disbelief what we found.
The true story is yet to be told.
I believe that there was a flying out of space object.
An alien saucer crash. The crew lies dying. The military cover it up. In the two museums at Roswell, New Mexico, the truth is on show. We are not alone. We can see for ourselves. We are the first to learn the government's biggest secret. And if they say it's not true, well, they would, wouldn't they? Encounters with extraterrestrials, abductions, reports of spaceships. Over the last 50 years, these are multiplying to industrial proportions. Not mere childish gullibility, but a genuine hunger to know if there is something outside ourselves fuels our curiosity. Is there life elsewhere? And does it visit us? The incident at Roswell is the most crucial case of all time for UFO believers. If the truth were out in the open, they say, it would provide the answers. No other case is heading so clearly to become a myth. No other case gathers so many new witnesses and fresh testimony on its journey. Yet its recorded beginnings are simple. Tinfoil in the farmlands of the southern state of New Mexico. An area about 200 yards in diameter with bright wreckage made up of rubber strips, tin foil, a rather tough paper, and sticks. That's what farmer Mac Brazel finds on the Foster Ranch on June the 14th. So unimportant does he think it, that it isn't until July the 7th that he reports it while visiting Roswell to sell wool. Sheriff Wilcox alerts the local field of the Army Air Force, home of the only unit in the world equipped with the atomic bomb. The field's intelligence officer, the late Jesse Marcel, and others collect remnants from the ranch and return to base. The press officer issues an excited release, quickly taken up by the local media.
The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence officer of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force Roswell Army Airfield was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of Chavez County. The flying object landed on a ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the rancher stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse A. Marcel of the 509th Bomb Group Intelligence Office. Action was immediately taken, and the disc was picked up at the rancher's home. It was inspected at the Roswell Army Airfield and subsequently loaned by Major Marcel to higher headquarters.
The press release stated in essence that we had in our possession a flying disc, and that Major Marcel, our base intelligence officer, was flying it to Fort Worth to turn over to General Ramey, who is the commanding general of the 8th Air Force.
The fear is that discs are Soviet aircraft. The Air Force may be carrying a new enemy secret weapon. General Ramey seeks urgent identification. He sends for a weather expert.
I was on duty at Fort Worth in the base weather station. The phone rang and it was General Ramey. And he said, get your ass over here as fast as you can. If you have a car, drive over here. If you don't have a car, take the first car with keys in it and come over here or walk over here. And so I just responded, yes, sir, and away I went.
The weather officer recognizes the remains of unusual specialist equipment for tracking winds. A radio wind or ray wind balloon and reflector, or target.
When I got in there, the inside of the room, the general was in there, and Marcel was there assuring me that this was a flying saucer he'd picked up in New Mexico. I told them that it was a Raywin balloon and a Raywin target, and if it wasn't, I'd eat it without salt or pepper. And I said, there is no doubt in my mind what that is.
The General's photo opportunity pooh-poohs the secret weapon theory. Press and public interest drain away.
The next morning when I picked up the newspaper, I saw that we didn't have a flying disc. All we had was a weather balloon. That was the end of it. It was forgotten.
Forgotten, but gone to a better life. The journey into legend begins. A high-tech folk tale. One which for some can never be proved or disproved. Concealed by the government. They don't want us to know the secret. They have alien technology. The beans are spilt 30 years later by a chance remark to a UFO writer.
In 1978, I was at a television station, waiting for a late reporter when the manager of the station, who was giving me coffee and a little embarrassed because the reporter was late, said, the guy you ought to talk to is Jesse Marcel. Who's he? Oh, well, he handled pieces of the wreckage of one of those saucers you're interested in when he was in the military. That got my attention.
The writer's attention results in the truth coming out. What Major Marcel remembers with certainty is no aircraft, nor a weather balloon, nor a missile. It's something else. On July the 2nd, lightning strikes a spaceship over Roswell. Bits fall off nearby. The actual crash is on the plains of San Agustin, 100 miles away. There is a wreck and dead aliens. They're found by archaeologists and a soil engineer. The military arrive and make them leave. Oh, and Brazel lied. He couldn't find the debris before July the 3rd at the ranch. The material makes a deep impression on Major Marcel and on his son, then aged 11.
My first memory of that time in 1947 was being awakened by my father very late at night, maybe after midnight, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, I have something I want to show to you. So I went out to the car to help him bring some boxes of this material in, dumped it out over the kitchen floor so we could examine it. And it turns out there's a lot of metallic debris. There's some I-beam material, some foil-like material, some black plastic debris. And he said he thinks this is part of what was then called a flying saucer. When I held one of these I-beams up to the light so the light would reflect across the inner surface, I noticed there was some writing of some kind. It looked like hieroglyphics, and it was all inside the inner surface of the I-beam itself. The symbols themselves look like geometric forms, like circles, balls, triangles, truncated pyramids, various configurations like that. Years after this event occurred, I heard my father talk of how he had people try to bend it with a sledgehammer. Even as thin material as this appeared to be, apparently it could not be dented even with a 16-pound sledgehammer. I heard my father talk about trying to burn it with a cigarette lighter, and he said it would not burn. He tried it to see if it would shrivel up like tinfoil wood under a cigarette lighter, and apparently it did not.
By mistake, or to divert attention from the site, the press release is put out. To avoid panic and hide the government's possession of alien technology, the story is covered up. The truth is out, but is it the whole truth? Where are the aliens now? And the wreckage? Is it the ultimate secret weapon? The story wins many friends. People can't stand yet another government conspiracy. In 1987, new details are leaked in hoax documents masquerading as a briefing for President-elect Eisenhower. They tell entirely different events. Different time, different place. Forget the lightning. On July the 2nd, a reconnaissance saucer malfunctions. Forget San Agustin. The crash is at Corona. 2 miles away, 4 human-like aliens are found. All traces are removed. The cover-up is extensive. A call from Washington warns the local radio station to stop covering the story or be shut down. It threatens the broadcasters.
You didn't see anything, you haven't heard anything, you don't know anything about this. And let me assure you that we will monitor you to be sure every broadcast that you make, that if you mention it, you're in big trouble. And furthermore, if a report comes to us that you have violated this agreement that we have made, we will tell you that we're not going to wait for a federal communications deal with warnings and all of that stuff. That, as of that moment, we are going to cancel your license to operate.
3 versions so far and no rest for a myth on the make. Want to shift some focus? How about a new witness, say someone who knows what happened to the aliens? Make sure you include most of the details of all previous versions. Don't forget to add a few tidbits about those space-age alien materials. There's no silence in the UFO busters. In 1991, a 4th version appears. The saucer lands briefly on the Foster Ranch on July the 2nd, takes off, gouges the ground for 150 feet, leaves wreckage. It comes to rest 2 miles away. Mac Brazel finds alien debris with almost magical properties. He shows it to his neighbors.
This piece of material that he brought, we examined it real carefully. It looked like it was a little larger than a pencil, and it was about 6 or 7 inches long. It was a light tan color, looked like a lightweight wood, but you couldn't burn it or cut it. Mac said that some of the other material looked like a aluminum foil, but when you'd crush it in your hand, it would straighten back out. There were no creases at all. And there was some tape that, or some part of it that had some printing on it. He said in a purplish pink ink. He said it wasn't like Japanese or the way he described it was more like hieroglyphics or something, you know, it was kind of pictures. It wasn't flowers or printing as we know anything.
At the second site, 2 miles away, 4 alien bodies and a crashed saucer are found. The military remove all traces and ring up the local undertaker come ambulance man. He's a brand new witness.
The mortuary officer from the Roswell Army Airfield called and said he would like to ask me a few questions. He wanted to know, did we have, what size baby caskets hermetically sealed? Were they 3'6" or 4 foot? He wanted to know how many that we have in stock and how long would it take us to get more.
Later, Glenn Dennis drives an injured airman out to the base in his ambulance.
When I got to the infirmary where I usually park, there was 3 old field ambulances there where I usually park. Naturally, I looked in and I saw a lot of debris there. It looked like some kind of a crash debris of some kind, not particularly an airplane crash, but it was some kind of debris. Then I noticed there was a piece that looked like the end of a canoe that was about 3.5 feet that came up to a point like a canoe, and then I noticed on the outer edges that it looked like some kind of hieroglyphics.
His emergency over, Glenn passes by the hospital laboratory.
We probably hadn't gone over 10 feet, and this door opened, and it was a nurse that I knew that I had worked with before. And she had a towel over her face, and she was gasping, I think, or maybe crying, I'm not sure, but I know she was gasping for breath. And she did see me, and she said, Glenn Dennis, get out of here as fast as you can, because you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Immediately following her were 2 gentlemen that also had a towel over their face, and they were gasping very much so. They went on across the hall with her and went into the door. It wasn't very just a few minutes, and here comes two MPs, and they said, take this gentleman off the base, and you drive him back. Don't let him drive. Make sure he's off the base, and you drive the ambulance yourself.
Dennis is removed on the orders of a menacing red-haired captain and a mean black sergeant. The next day, he meets the nurse. She's in a terrible state.
I've never seen anyone that she was as white as a ghost. Her hair was just all completely messed up. She would like scratching her face, and then she would just almost completely in total shock. Her story was that they were doing a partial autopsy. On one hospital gurney was a crash bag it was unzipped with two very mutilated small little bodies. It said very mutilated. And she said, for instance, there was a hand that was severed, and they, in a long forceps, they would turn the hand over, and they were describing it only 4 fingers. Small pads on each end of the fingers, and it looks like there's little miniature suction cups.
The further it goes, the more witnesses it grows. Just when you thought it might die down, fresh versions 5 and 6, more crash sites, more aliens, and more military policemen are all on the way. 1992, the War of the Words continues. July the 8th, this time, Saucer 1 crashes 75 miles from Roswell. Dead aliens, 4. 150 miles away, a second saucer is found by archaeologists. Oh, and new witnesses. ET body count, now 7. Plus 1 who wants to phone home. New players appear. At the first sight, a menacing figure, a red-haired colonel. At the second, 2 others, a red-haired captain and a black sergeant. Surely not the ones who kicked the mortician off the base. 1994, the millennium approaches. The 4th of July, 2 Franciscans record something crashing to Earth. Independence Day at last. The truth and the saucer come closer. Not at San Agustin, nor even at Corona. The doomed disc drops down just north of Roswell's museums. It's found by archaeologists, entirely different archaeologists. Enter an incredible eyewitness. He claims a secret mission took him to the crash site itself.
We got into several jeeps and some trucks and so on, went north, and we clipped the fence and went into the area, and that's where we saw this glow. We saw this craft, and it didn't look like an airplane, didn't look like a missile, and it was something that was just odd. The craft itself was close to almost a heel shape. I would say that it might have been about 15, 20 feet in length. It was kind of half open. One body was thrown up to the base of the arroyo. The other body was half in, half out. They were well-developed individuals, maybe around 5'8", 5'9". Very small nose, small ears. The eyes were round, fully round, not big. They were good-looking people, very good-looking people. Of course, a lot of us were still in shock, you know, and in disbelief what we found.
No military records support Kaufman's story. The red-haired officer and the sergeant can't be traced. The nurse's story can't be obtained firsthand. That doesn't phase a legend. The next stage is usually a carefully preserved piece of wreckage or genuine body part. It's time for the alien freak show. Those selling film of an alleged autopsy would have us believe it's true. For legal reasons, we can't show you the original. We've reconstructed it. With the help of ex-8th Air Force Colonel Dan McGovern, using the correct camera. In combat, he filmed the original Memphis Belle. He was the first military cameraman to film on the ground at Nagasaki. Much of that film is still classified. What does he think of the film of the alleged autopsy?
Well, from my point of view, I think that the whole setup is very amateur, to say the least.
Autopsies are well lit. The patient doesn't move. The cameras of the day are capable of good focus. Yet the autopsy tape is out of focus, overexposed in black and white. Wouldn't they use color?
It would be standard practice. Matter of fact, color is highly recommended for all medical procedures, performing operations, and definitely so in autopsies.
The Bell and Howell camera weighs 7 pounds. The 2 cameras recommended would be on mounts, as is Discovery's. Ray Santilli, who sells the film worldwide, won't do an interview with us. He won't let Dan speak to the cameraman on the phone. He won't let Kodak test a single frame of the picture. Dan's seal of approval would confirm this as the most historic film ever shot. Proof that we are not alone. Santilli's version depends on the mystery cameraman stealing secret film. Is this possible?
It would be impossible to hide 20 rolls of film, especially if it was classified. It has to be accounted for.
Santilli claims the cameraman was flown in from Washington, D.C., 1,600 miles away. Is that likely?
Each Army Air Force base had its own base photo lab. They had the capability to process film, shoot film, and take care of anything that was on that particular base.
What about the name Santilli gave for the cameraman, Jack Barnett?
Jack Barnett. Never heard of him. Jack Barnett. Never heard the name. We cameramen are a very tight lot. We knew pretty well who the cameramen were in those early days. This is not what it seems to be. It's quite a hoax and it's a phony.
We can unmask the forensic expert who studied the so-called autopsy film for Discovery. A forensic pathologist, a veteran of over 20,000 autopsies, including air crashes. This is the first dummy he's dissected.
We have what is described as an alien. That is an absolutely earth-shattering event. It's never happened before, and it's going to be a long time before it happens again.
How would he go about his first alien?
If I was doing this post-mortem, I would have released all the neck structures from the mouth onwards, and then picked up the heart and lungs, taken it to a dissecting table, and then made a dissection. Instead of which, all I saw was somebody picking up a pair of scissors with index finger and thumb, which is certainly not the way any pathologist would use it, because as you can see, it waves around like so, because you cannot guide it. Most pathologists would tend to use the thumb through one loop and the middle finger through the other loop, so that the index finger is available to guide it and steady it. What they were doing was they were just going inside, picking up an organ, snipping away almost without looking, and putting it into little trays and taking it away, almost like in a butcher's shop, basically, rather than a pathologist's mortuary. Now, it's bad enough if you were to do it in a human being whose anatomy we know reasonably well, but to do it on an alien who the first ever I think it's almost sacrilegious for it to be done in that manner. I think on the basis of what we have seen, I'm reasonably convinced that this was not a autopsy in the ordinary sense. It was probably fabricated,